And I asked you, you emailed Len Dobbs or Harry Pinker, right? Your set of questions.
Yeah, them, yeah.
So that's the preferred, like with everyone, that's what you do, email.
Well, I haven't done a written interview for like 5 or 6 years. I did 41 or 42 of them, and that's what
Yeah.
yeah. There was one guy named Larry, the guy who started, Larry Sanger, who did, he's one of the co-founders of Wikipedia,
Oh
and
yeah.
he was a bit odd because he I sent a list of maybe 40 questions and whatnot, and he's like, I can't do this. I'm overwhelmed. He was having panic attacks with it. So he said,
Oh yeah.
you had to break them up into smaller bits. So I broke it up into maybe 7 or 8 questions each time, and it took him a few months. And after a year and a half or so of laboring over it, he
Yeah.
answered. It's a pretty good interview. It's not as good as some of the other interviews, but
Yeah.
it's just odd. I was talking about people who are camera shy. Here's a
Yeah.
person who's not, there's no camera, but being asked these questions, he apparently had a nervous breakdown. And it's just interesting because these are things that I would never have guessed that a person could feel. And here's a
Mm.
guy who's seemingly accomplished. I mean, if you want to consider Wikipedia an accomplishment,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he had this total kind of breakdown. Steven
Mm.
Pinker was interesting. He gave a good interview. Lem Dobbs' interview is a really brilliant one because
Yeah.
he sometimes doesn't answer the questions, as I recall. He goes off again on these bizarre tangents, seemingly, but shows who he is. That's the way he
Mm.
thinks. And so
Yeah.
I think it works very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, my favorite interview is the one I got to know you from, James Berardinelli, the reviewer, critic.
Oh,
Uh,
James Berardinelli. Okay.
yeah. 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 I like him. I like his. He's a bit objective if you think about it.
Yeah, he
Uh,
seemed like a nice enough guy. Again, with you can only when I interview the people video, you get a sense of who they are. Some of
yeah.
my favorite interviews have been with female actors, the actresses,
Mm.
because I remember there's a few interviewees that the women are more apt to dig emotionally than the men.
Mm.
And there was a woman that I interviewed, a couple of them would stick in mind. There was a TV show in the 90s called Babylon 5. I interviewed Mira Furlan, who played an alien.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
really terrific. I liked her. Then there was
Yeah.
an actress named Michelle Green, who
Yeah.
I interviewed. She was on LA Law in the 80s and 90s. And
Yeah.
it was funny because in parts of the interview, it's almost like she was flirting with me. And if I had been single and we lived in the same town, I would say, "You want to go out sometime?"
Yeah. Yeah.
She it was a 3-hour interview. She wanted to talk because she had never
Yeah.
been taken seriously as an actress. She was
Yeah.
always
Yeah. I know.
dismissed as a secondary actress on that show. She never got to be a big star.
Yeah.
Now she's directing theater and whatnot. She's more fulfilled. And she
Yeah.
was happy that someone wanted to take her seriously, her ideas. And
And
that's always interesting.
yeah, and this is again one point what I love about your interviewing them. You could sense the I don't know, I won't use the word passion, but something, even that the paranormal guy, Bart Steiner, and I could sense it from the words that he was saying, that he was probably happy that someone is doing so much, and he was so courteous, on top of that.
Uh,
So I think that's
Yeah, you're talking about the written interview with the guy who's the famous.
yeah,
Yeah, he was a good interview, and he seemed like a real nice guy. And again, he's one of these people who wrote probably 120 books on this subject, and he's sort of an encyclopedia of paranormal stuff. But yeah, it's easy to make fun of people. One of the things, I don't want to just interview academics. Probably 2/3 of my interviews are with people who are academics, but I like interviewing I interview some people with interesting websites. People who have self-published books that are interesting, even if I disagree with them. They generally are more apt to give good interviews, because if you're with a big publisher, you're like, well, I'm a famous author, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you're interviewing someone who self-published a book with an odd topic, they are going to be grateful that someone
yeah,
is actually listening to them, and they are going to be more open. And a couple of times, one of the things I find the most interesting when I do some of these interviews is I've sometimes spoken with people who are so-called experts. They have a master's degree or a PhD in whatever subject. They've been 30 or 40 years in academia. And this has happened probably 2-3 dozen times in interviews. I'll ask a question that seems rather obvious about the subject at hand, and they'll say, I never thought about that before. And I'm always taken aback, and I think to myself, I don't say it out loud, but I think, how can you have studied a subject for 30 or 40 years and never had that thought when it just occurred to me 20 or 30 seconds in?
Yeah. I mean, see, that's what I think. Your intellect is just different. You're just, I don't know, it's more probing or something. I mean, most people just don't operate on that level. It's impossible. I observe people. I'm very good at observing people.
Here's the thing, and I've said this before. I've got what I call a convective memory. I don't have a file drawer memory. You probably met a lot of people who can remember, last Tuesday you and I were at that bar and you said to me, when so and so comes there, and they have that memory. They can go back and very detailed. I don't have that kind of memory, but I'm good. The memory that I'm good at is things like the skunks that I missed and then may have hit in the road. Maybe years ago, if that had happened 25 years ago, maybe 5 years afterwards, I would have been in the middle of a poem line, and that would come to me. And this is why when you read, whether it's a poem, a story, a novel, or some of my plays, my mind acts the way a convection current. I don't know if you know, is like water that's heated on the top of an ocean will eventually sink to the bottom as it cools, and then it'll be at the bottom of the ocean for 20 years before it comes up again as new water forces up. And my mind seems to be able to pluck the right things to say at the right time, 95 times out of 100. But I would not have thought of that if I would not engage in an interview or engage in writing. I have to be doing something specifically that my mind goes in deep down into the fishbowl and pulls out the right thing at the right time. It's like, if you've ever seen, I don't know if they have them in India, there's a kids game here in America where you can have like a little crane constructor thing pull out a stuffed animal if you can get it, and you get it.
Even like, with candy bars and all those things. Amusement park. And you've said you might be writing a book on the series, The Art of the Interview or something, just a collection of, even now you already have 43, 44 of these in-depth interviews, right? So have you ever thought of like making a book, self-published book or something? I remember you using the word, The Art of the Interview, as a book.
I mean, maybe there are lots of things that I throw out. I mean, I have probably 3 or 4 dozen movie reviews that I've never posted online, and I'll probably end up doing like the Lost Cosmoetica reviews or something. Just put it out on Amazon. The only things that I'm not going to put online are things that might at some point make money, which are my longer novels.